now we're going to invite you to understand what's on the walls here. Some of you could perhaps do this tour yourself because you've been in here studying the murals. But for those of you who may not have the in-depth knowledge of where these came from with Sigmund Årseth and the Spring Grove connection, we would ask Bill Freed, who's a member of Sons of Norway and on the board of the Giant City Youth Heritage Center, to come and say a few words. I'm not sure if Bill wants a microphone. He's got a good voice to carry if he walks around. But
probably easier to walk. Well, welcome on behalf of the Giants Board Heritage Center. You have a number of our fellow board members here today, and we're so glad we were able to host Lee, and so honored that he asked to have this reception here. Let's do this for just a second, otherwise we're going to ring all the day long. Our guests are in the habit of collecting St. Olaf award winners, because Lee is our second, and you are sitting in the presence of our first award winner, in that this room was painted by Sigmund Årseth and Sally de Royce in 1 week. They did a great deal of research and a great deal of conversation with a variety of people in Spring Grove to try to tell their story and learn what it was that made this area of Minnesota what we refer to commonly as Norwegian Ridge. And then he said, buy these paints and these colors and have them all ready, and they came over. And we looked at the colors and went, I'm not so sure what this is going to turn out to be. But we are sure glad we trusted his vision and his artistry. And so just a very brief tour, if you will. This is Old Norway. For those of you who have been to Norway, you might say, that looks a lot like Valdres. And that's because that's where Sigmund has spent the great majority of his time on our earth with us. And he wanted to make sure he told us what the old country looked like. Now we know that Norwegians know every name of every mountain in their particular neighborhood, but we haven't collected all of those stories. But just for fun, we do have a man on the mountain over here. And this one I refer to as the silo. It kind of reflects a grain elevator that you might find in any place in southern Minnesota and the Midwest. And way over here, she's bashful, she's hiding, is Sigmund's great-grandmother. And what was significant and why it's important for us is he said that she had 7 children. And when the first packed up and moved to the New World, she was saddened, but traditionally stoic about it all. And then the second, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. And when the 6th finally left, she finally broke down and cried. Lucky for us, the last stayed, otherwise we wouldn't have Sigmund to bless our room as we do. But we tried to tell the story of coming to America. For those of you who are aware of the Norwegian geography and so forth, we fudged a little bit because Valdres is not on the western coast. But we did want to put a representation of those early times coming to America. And so we gave a ship, and it's also how you can get to our gift shop later if you're so interested. We have 3 more panels on the east side of the building, and they are telling the story of what this world was like. 1852, there were obviously French in this area and a few Englishmen, but between 1852 and 1853, the Norwegians started to show up. And this panel represents what the world would have been like. You'll notice a few Native Americans. We refer to them as Ho-Chunk these days. Back then they were the Winnebago tribe. And they still lived in the area because this part of the world was kind of a separation between 2 native tribes. And it was the American government's belief that if we had this, what I call a demilitarized zone in between the two, that we would keep the peace in the Midwest. Well, it made it possible for people to move here because there were no large communities of Native Americans living here. And so we cut down the trees and we built our bridge barns and we built our homes, and we even, in the middle, you'll see a little peach outcropping, because some of the people who moved here came at the wrong time or had their priorities mixed up but didn't quite get their houses built before winter. And so a number of them put doors on the front of caves and lived there for the first time in America. Next to that were two things that were very important to the Norwegian immigrants, and that was the institutions of education and religion. It was very, very important that they establish those here in the New World. And so you will see a representation of our first stone church in Spring Grove. That was a lovely edifice, except we started to put too many people in it and it started to make funny cracking noises. And then I decided to rebuild it in a more brick fashion later on. And you see in our town now, as you leave, the third variation of the Trinity Lutheran Church in America, a Norwegian language, Norwegian Synod church that hosted many different activities throughout the early years of Christianity in this part of the United States. And then on the far panel way down here is a representation of small town America. We refer to it as maybe circa 1940, where every small town had more than one grocery store, more than one car dealership, more than one implement dealer, and all of that. But we like to have you take notice. There were a couple things on there. For example, you have a baseball player in the bottom left-hand corner, because Spring Grove was very proud of its town baseball. And everyone showed up to play the neighboring team. They'd hop on the train, they'd come to Spring Grove, they'd play the game, they'd go back that evening, and vice versa. And we have some still wonderful memories of our baseball players, some of them still in existence today, who were pretty good players, pitchers, batters, catchers in their day. We also have a representation of Olav Medal and a representation of a ski jump. Yes, Spring Grove had a ski jump about 2¼ mile in this direction. And yes, most of the small communities that had bluffs like we did had ski jumps, and many people came from Europe to do the circuit during some winters and compete in our area. But the last thing we want to note up there is obviously they're celebrating 7th of Mai, but we wouldn't be here today without that train engine that's on that wall. In 1879, the train came through Spring Grove and made possible for Spring Grove to grow as opposed to Blackhammer or some of our surrounding communities to grow. And it stayed here for exactly 100 years. 1979, the tracks were removed. And yet we owe our very existence of about 1,300 people for the better part of the last century. The last thing that you'll notice over here is our representation of bunads. Obviously, we have as many as 18 different representations of various parts of Norway. Here in Spring Grove, we couldn't put all of their bunads on the wall, but you get a flavor for that young courting lifestyle and so forth, and an idea of what's there. On the wall, you see some very significant names. This is Immigrant Hall. These are the immigrants who came to Spring Grove. If you were to imagine this room being the epicenter, the center of the universe, not too hard, you'll notice that they are on the walls geographically. So everybody on this side immigrated to positions east of town, but these people on the west of town. Had we thought of this wonderful idea first, we'd save some room on the north and south, but that didn't turn out so well. And so this lovely space was painted for us and interpreted for us by Sigmund Årseth in 2010. Unfortunately, he passes in 2012. Not before he gives us one more painting, the last thing he painted in the United States. And that is a life cycle that is in our other gift shop room as you came in. And if you look up, you will see symbolic representations from creation to the end times, but also from human birth to death. And we are just so honored to have it. In fact, so honored that he did all of this for us that we commissioned a sculpture that is a pretty good likeness in our garden space outside our Pioneer Garden area. And his collaborators in the United States mashed up, as we would say today, 5 of his other murals that exist elsewhere in Minnesota and Wisconsin and the Midwest, and put them on the walls outside so that we could pay homage and commemoration. And a couple of years ago to inaugurate all of this, we invited his 2 daughters, their grandchildren, and their husbands over to have them installed, and it was a special evening, much like today. So Lee, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for honoring us with your helping to teach us much of what we know in Spring Grove about our Norwegian heritage. And thanks for all the happy tears. And well deserved. So, thank you all for coming.
So I suppose everyone's getting a little hungry. Well, I want to just do a couple of thanks to Chris Wadel, who did all the food for us today, and also, of course, for the Norwegian-American Council at Minneapolis for paying for it. Chris also donated the sparkling wine we're drinking, and as I said earlier, one of these students from Caledonia is now a master baker, and I picked up the cake from his wonderful workmanship up in Rochester at Lee the other day, and it's just gorgeous. It's got kernkaken made out of frosting on it. It's amazing. So we got to be sure to get pictures of it before it gets broken into there. And so Chris has put together a nice spread working with the consulate. And who am I missing to thank before I call up Pastor Ron?
Lori and Chris.
If I start introducing, which I'm going to, everyone that Lee has worked with who's been important in one of these Norwegian organizations, I think I'll do it from here, and if you can stand up, that'd be great. So first of all, Lee, come up here a second. I'll ask, how many of you have a Luther background? I have a Luther College background. Now I'm waiting to see if a young man back here is saying that he's going to Luther or not. This was a trick. So just in case you want to talk to some students, we have some. And how about Vesterheim, who's worked with at Vesterheim over the years in any capacity? So we also have the Johnson family and Chris Johnson, who's in charge of Vesterheim now. How about Sons of Norway? How many of you have been with Sons of Norway someplace? And you know, Ivan is the CEO of Sons of Norway. That's his day job. So we can talk to you about that. How about Norskadalen? Can you tell about who's in Norway?
I'm very delighted to have our director of 2 years now, Lori Duchek, who's Swedish. She's really taken on the Norwegian role too. She's a real blessing to Norskadalen. I'm so happy you came all the way across the river to be here today.
So I probably, can everyone see each other in here, so I don't need to make them stand up? Chris is in a precarious position, so, but it'd be great if you can get, John, you can get them on film, so when we re-show this, it'd be nice. Okay, how about, and I'm a Laxalaget member. Anyone else here been in Laxalaget? You don't even know what that is, do you? Okay, it's a Norwegian women's club, and instead of eating torsk, anyone here torskeklubbet? Yeah. We eat salmon. So, and then Lee, what other organizations are represented here today? Is Yggdrasil? Do you have the Yggdrasil?
Yggdrasil, we have Yggdrasil.
Okay, great. Yggdrasil.
And then we have Vestlandslag, one of our Norwegian bygdelags.
And from Vestlandslag, he's talking about. And also, of course, for Luren, we have some Luren people here. You saw some of them earlier. And Luren is 150 years this summer. So they're actually helping to host the Summerfest in Decorah. Anyone here a Rosemuller? Because the Rosemalling event is, they have a convention this summer in Decorah as well. And I'm sorry, I'm missing some things, if anyone wants to throw it in. Of course, how many people here have volunteered to work with Norwegian Ridge Language and Culture Camp here at Giants of the Earth? Lee helps with that a lot, as well as with the school events that Bill leads. So, yep.
I'd like to say something about, I was a teacher for 35 years, so anybody that's connected with the schools, got 2 back there.
So how many teachers are here? Anyone who's worked in the schools in any capacity working with students? Great, okay. Now, we didn't mention the Lions and other clubs like that that Lee has been president and worked with, because they're not necessarily Norwegian, so who cares, right?
Yeah.
Oh, of course. That was really nice that Bill talked about all the church connections we have too. Okay, so I'm going to now ask, and then after that, maybe we can start the line for food. We have dishes and things back there, and I'm going to ask Pastor Ron to come up, give our closing.
Thank you for honoring Lee. For anybody that deserves it, you certainly do. And any time that I visited in Caledonia, I'm just panting, trying to keep up and so forth. And all the people, we've known each other for 30 years. Just a quick background. We've known each other for 30 years. And actually Caledonia is almost, and Spring Grove, my second home, because I would spend Thanksgiving with Pastor Storlie and Jan. And then the next day, Lee and myself and Rolf and probably the Undertaker too. And we would go out visiting old churches and cemeteries, and we'd stop for coffee and the donuts.
And they did the Christmas decorations.
Yes. I don't know why you would let them out.
It was very helpful to let him out.
So I've also known, the family for these 30 years, and I've seen how the parents had raised the kids with good values. And but we're concentrating a lot on his Norwegian volunteerism, and someone did mention church. That is, I would say, the second most important, or on the same level as your Norwegian heritage. Your church means a lot to you. And we pastors crave for dedicated people to be a part of our churches. And I know you used to drag, probably, some of your students to church, and they did this and that, right, Gail? And so church and his faith is very important to him. Your church comes first too in Caledonia, Emmanuel. And then you've also worked with your synod things, you volunteered there.
I'm the board for 10 years.
That I didn't know. You should have told me. So I would also thank you for your involvement with your church. You did a lot. You volunteered there, folding bulletins and this and that, aggravating the secretary and harassing her. Yeah, we've had some very good times, and I hold our friendship very dearly, and also the kids and Mom. So, thank you for your involvement in your church. I always tell my congregation when we have a prayer, I ask them to close their eyes, because then you can concentrate on what is being said or done. And so this is for you, Lee, and for all of us here gathered today, that the Almighty and merciful God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit bless us and keep us today and forevermore. Amen. And thank you again, Lee, for and Gail, thank you to enjoying meals at your house.
Yes. Okay, I have one last thing for Lee. Do you know what that is?
It's a cross.
It's from the church that Pastor Rolf help send over to Norway. So it's a pin in the window. And I wanted you to have it. It's on the island of Radøy. I think many of you learned people went to Radøy. And so I bought a few of those because I thought they were so special when I was here with the board last year. So I thought that would look nice on your sweater if you like doing things like I do. And so with that, thank you all. And maybe we can start a line to the food. We have smoked salmon as well as other treats. So please, maybe the back row can start and kind of filter through.
There you go.
Thanks for coming.
They say